Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, President Morial, for being on. My name is Dominique Winfrey. I'm a mayoral fellow in the fourth quarter of my fellowship here in the office of Mayor Harris. Thank you. And today I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Mr. Marc Morial. Mr. Morial, who has been described as one of the few national leaders to possess street smarts and Broadway savvy, is the current president and CEO of the National Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization. He served as the highly successful and popular mayor of New Orleans, as well as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. He previously was a Louisiana state senator and was a lawyer in New Orleans with an active, high-profile practice. He is a leading voice on the national stage in the battle for jobs, education, housing, and voting rights equity. A graduate of Georgetown University Law Center and the University of Pennsylvania, he has been recognized as one of the 100 most influential Black Americans by Ebony Magazine, one of the top 50 nonprofit leaders by the Nonprofit Times, and one of the 100 most influential Black lawyers in America. And he has also been inducted into the International Civil Rights Walk of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. It is with esteemed pleasure that I introduce our keynote for this afternoon, Mr. Marc Morial.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. And one day, I certainly hope I'll call you Madam Mayor. Let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for what you do and how you are leaning in to make a difference in these times of great challenge and difficulty in America. And I want to thank my colleague, Tanya, who leads the Memphis Urban League, for reaching out to me and extending the original invitation for me to be a part of this summit. I want to thank the people in the city of Memphis and the mayor and the fellows and the staff and all of you who are a part of this conversation today. I wanted to take a minute to just tell you what you already know, but to create some historical framing around it. We live in a time of conflict, chaos, and controversy. And I believe that history will record this time and this moment as one of the most consequential years in American history. Perhaps it will be as consequential and as memorable as the year 1968, which was the year of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King in your city in Memphis, Tennessee, the death of Bobby Kennedy, the year that Lyndon Baines Johnson decided he would not seek re-election, and a year which saw the escalation of the war in Vietnam and the escalation of protests around civil rights and the Vietnam War. 2020 comes, if you will, as the 20th year in the 21st century, a century where we've seen tremendous upheaval and change. And we've seen great crises, beginning with the crises around the 2000 election, where we essentially had a presidential election with hanging chads, swinging chads. Some of you may remember, some of you may be too young to remember, but ultimately a presidential election which was decided on a 5-4 vote of the United States Supreme Court. That led to the country being involved in 2 wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, wars that we remain engaged in almost 20 years later. Then we saw Hurricane Katrina. devastate my hometown of New Orleans, but lay bare the ravages of poverty, racism, and discrimination. And we saw a response by our national government, which initially lacked compassion and caring. And we saw fumbling and stumbling by local government in New Orleans at that time. And we were only 5 years into the 21st century when that took place. 3 years later, the housing market and the economy began its historic collapse called the Great Recession. Millions of people, some 15 million Americans, were laid off. Millions of people lost their hard-earned equity in their homes. Black home ownership began to plummet. And the country did something historic in that year, 2008, and elected the first African-American president in American history, Barack Obama, who was then tasked to lead a comeback of the American economy. He made his mark with the Recovery Act. He made his mark with the Affordable Care Act. He made his mark with the creation of the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau. While this recession was raging and beginning to heal, then we had the East Coast of the United States hit by a great storm called Superstorm Sandy. Then police misconduct, vigilante misconduct reared its head. Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, the Mother Emanuel 9, Eric Garner. We saw hate, brutality, and violence directed against Black people shatter our consciousness and our confidence in the American ethos. And in every one of these cases, for the most part, with exception, Walter Scott's killer was convicted. The Mother Emanuel killer was convicted. We saw a stunning lack of accountability take place. And then the country, in 2016, elected an avowed nationalist, an avowed white nationalist, to lead the nation in the personage of President 45. Well, we can fast forward to 2020. As the year began, we had historic low unemployment. 6 months later, we have unemployment levels rivaling the Great Depression. The nation's leadership is challenged. We are challenged. People are hungry. They're in pain. They're suffering. Millions have been affected. Over 100,000 have died. Black, brown, and American and Indian, Native American communities have been disproportionately affected by this disease called COVID-19, this pandemic, this virus. Then on Memorial Day weekend, we saw George Floyd murdered, lynched, killed before our very eyes on the streets of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And now record protest, peaceful protest, the acceleration of a movement for Black Lives Matter, taking place. Question for all of us is, what will we do and where will we stand in this moment of chaos, conflict, and controversy? Where will you stand as an individual? Where will organizational leaders and faith leaders and governmental leaders stand? Where will they stand? Will you stand on the side of justice and what is right? Will you hide? Will you retreat to the grandstands? We all have to ask ourselves this question. At the National Urban League and the Urban League movement, we embrace the Black Lives Matter movement. We have been vocal about the disparities of COVID. We have fed people. We have helped people find new employment. We've helped people find and keep a roof over their heads. We're in the trenches helping people survive. Our leaders in Louisville and Minneapolis and Atlanta have been on the front lines calling for justice for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, and many other places. At the national level, we've sought to define and be a voice on the COVID disparities and the need for there to be a forceful response by the Congress, expanding unemployment benefits, putting resources into the public health systems in an equitable way, helping small businesses seek to survive this tsunami of an economic downturn. We are doing that work. Police reimagination and reform. That's what the operational need is. The operational need is reimagination and reform. The operational need is to invest money, resources into youth programs, affordable housing, health programs, schools and education. Can't fix a community with policing. You have to do other things, although people need public safety, particularly against violent crimes. But we have to have a new approach for America's urban communities, which have been the subject of redlining. So the National Urban League is raising those issues to candidates who are seeking election in 2020. We assisted, we participated in, we were part of the drafting effort for the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which passed the House, which would create a national framework on police accreditation, holding police officers accountable, get rid of this absurd qualified immunity standard, and give prosecutors more power to prosecute offensive, brutal police officers. That is the work that we're doing. For you, each of you, it is time for you to make a commitment to be part of this movement in the way in which you can. You can protest. You can be an active voice on Twitter. You must vote. You must vote. Voting and protesting are not differential tactics. They're fingers on a hand of power. A hand of power, a hand of influence. Voting, protesting, speaking out on social media, spending your money wisely and spending it with people, Black businesses or businesses that support your values. Tactics on a hand. Let's not get sidetracked by false tactical discussions that miss the essential point. In the 21st century, by any means necessary, which is intelligent and not designed to create violence, includes voting, includes protesting, includes being counted in the census, and many other things. Be involved, be active, be a part of this moment which we want to transform to a movement for Black lives, and a movement to truly fulfill the promise of this nation, which was made when the nation was founded, but not made to Black people not made to women, not made to brown people. In this long struggle of now over 250 years, the country will celebrate its birthday in 2026. We celebrate this birthday by saying this nation has made a solid long-term commitment to end structural racism, to create an America which is truly an America of opportunity and quality of life for each and every one of its people. An America of the future is going to be a multi-racial America, but it's got to be an America free of racism, free of intolerance, free of hatred. Work with me on that. I'd like to invite all of you to be a part of the Urban League movement. Our website at nul.org, nul.org. Follow me on social media at Marc Morial. Marc is M-A-R-C-M-O-R-I-A-L. Follow us, be a part of the ongoing conversation. Join me every Tuesday on Facebook, 10 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday for Facebook Live. And if you listen to Ricky Smiley on the radio, I'm doing a once-a-week commentary on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Be a part of this conversation. So I'm going to pause there and open the floor for any questions or comments. Again, I want to thank all of you for being a part of this. I want to thank you for the invitation and for the chance to be united with all of you in this work and in this fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Morial. That was amazing. So we do have a few questions in the chat box. The first is from Greg. He asks, how can the collection, analysis, and reporting of where we are now and the results of changes that we will make be most useful to policymakers?
A good question, and I would point your attention to the National Urban League State of Black America report at nul.org, and very specifically the Equality Index, which basically documents disparity. So if you look at that index, if you want to know the death rate of African Americans due to hypertension versus that of whites, it's in the report. If you want to know the wealth gap of blacks, wealth status of blacks and whites, it's in the report. We've got 300 data sets in an index. The importance of the report and the importance of data is to not only measure where you are, but to determine whether policies that you undertake make a difference and change the law. We know, for example, that the Fair Housing Act, the Community Reinvestment Anti-Redlining Law, many steps that were taken between 1968 and let's say 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that period, increase the black home ownership rate from 38, 39%, almost all the way up to 50%. So those steps that took place yielded a measurable benefit. We also know that from 2008, 9, 10, that the homeownership rate has plunged amongst African Americans, which tells you that the policies that have been undertaken have been inadequate to move the needle. So I think it's important, those of you that are serious about policy, serious about either serving in government, serious about doing research, serious about doing journalists, being communicators, know where the data is. State of Black America report, Equality Index is the best data on racial disparities anywhere in America.
Thank you. We have another question. The question is, what can we do to inspire younger voters to engage in the political process? They have the energy and the fire.
We need to make sure younger voters are part of the protest moment. We need to make sure that younger voters understand when you vote, what are you doing? You're voting for people. This is about civics education, for people who are going to go and they're going to make a decision on what the laws are. They're going to make a decision on how the federal budget is chopped up, how it's distributed. Who are the people you vote for? You vote for the mayor. The mayor picks the police chief. The mayor picks the rec director. The mayor picks the head of housing and therefore influences what they will do. The mayor submits a budget. So he or she will make decisions. We need our folks, young people, to know when they vote for people, what is the power that these folks have. It's about educating. Housing policy is impacted by mayors and governors and presidents, city council members, legislators, and members of Congress. I think what we should say to people is call the question. We should teach our folks how to ask people who are running, what is your plan for housing? What is your plan for education? Or will you endorse, for example, the National Urban Cities Main Street Marshall Plan? Will you endorse the Black agenda that we're working on, that we're going to release on August 28th? I mean, the key point here is to understand that voting is not a mere exercise. It is a step that involves the distribution of power and money in America. And so we got to educate young people. We got to make sure, and I think that in this moment, the chance for not only young and young at heart, I'm young at heart. I stay young at heart. You can be young, but you got to be young at heart, young in mind, young in spirit, should participate. And by participating, gain a greater understanding of what the issues are that we have to fight for to better our communities and better the nation.
Thank you. We have a couple of more questions here. We have another one. What will be the top 3 critical signs that the moment you spoke of has transitioned to a movement?
Well, first step I'm going to be looking at, is there going to be record voter turnout in the Black community in November? Have we made the connection between protest and policy? Is there going to be record turnout? We had record turnout in 2012. 66% of all registered African Americans voted in the United States. In 2016, that number sunk to 59%. Are we going to beat the 2012 number in terms of African American turnout and overall turnout in this election? That's number one barometer. Number two, I want to look back a year from now and make a determination. Are we still engaged in the conversation, the politics of protest? Do we still have that constructive anger, that productive energy still going? And have we been able, if we elect people in the fall, been able to see meaningful change? George Floyd Justice Act going to pass. Is a new living wage bill going to pass? Is there going to be a plan to build what we need in the country, which is millions of new affordable housing units, going to be enacted? Those are some of the things we want to evaluate, but we have to keep the awareness and keep productive, anger. We can be angry. We can be outraged. Have we channeled it? Have we focused it on meaningful change? We must vote in the fall elections. We've got to connect protest to policy.
Awesome. And our last question here is from Edward. He asks, how can we get corporations to be proactive to social justice issues instead of being reactive?
We're all consumers. We spend money. Some on this virtual event work for corporations. We have to continue to raise our voices. I just had a Zoom with a group of young people who work for a major corporation, and they wrote a letter to the CEO of the company and made some recommendations, suggestions / demands about how that company, you know, it's when you're working with your employer, you want to communicate. You want to do it smart. You want to do it intelligent. You want to do it in a productive way. But the most important thing is a people's movement, which is what we're witnessing, can't be thwarted, ignored, or stopped. So I'm going to say stay woke, stay active.
Well, President Morial, it's been an absolute honor to have you on today. Just thank you for the robust dialogue that you gave us and the points that you gave us. And so if we were in person, I would say, let's give them a round of applause and everyone would stand to their feet and we would clap. But we're virtual, so we can't see all of that. So again, thank you for this amazing
Thank you for
discussion.
having me. And last thing I'll say is, for some of you, let me invite you to become a part of the National Urban League by joining the National Urban League Young Professionals or otherwise being a part of the affiliate in your hometown. Go to NUL.org. If you're in Memphis, be a part of the Memphis Urban League. If you're in another city, be a part. Please join us. Please join our movement, join our family.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Danielle Inez.
Thank you so much. All right, can you guys hear me? See me? Thumbs up.
Thank you. I'm signing off. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Danielle Inez, Chief of Staff to Mayor Lee Harris, and I am the co-organizer of today's virtual summit. For me, this has been a refreshing experience to listen to today's panelists, to hear your questions, to review your feedback, and even engage with a lot of you on the Southern Justice Summit Working Group on Facebook. If you've been with us since this morning, you heard Commissioner Tammy Sawyer, Mayor Harris, and Memphis Urban League President Tanya Cecily Bayman remind us of this moment that we're in and the importance for all of us to do our part to help protect the health and safety of our urban communities especially. As Mayor Morial said, we must have a new approach for America's urban communities. And with the impact of COVID-19, we even had to have a new approach to today's discussion. And so I want to thank all of you for playing an active part in today's dialogue. But it doesn't end today. This is work, y'all. We want to define our long-term strategies for creating a model of justice in the South that can be replicated across the country. We'll start by capturing some of the models and nuggets that we received today, but I also encourage you to submit your writings for inclusion in a publication that can serve as a guiding document for urban counties in the South, as well as across the country. Many of you are on the ground doing the work. Many of you are activists. Like Mayor Morial said, we all must be activists. We all must champion the policies and legislation that will keep our communities safe and keep our residents alive. So I'm asking you to please share your perspective, share your work so that we can include you. Dominique Winfrey, I want to thank you for being my right hand in planning this event today. Commissioner Tammy Sawyer, thank you. President Bayman, thank you. Chief Public Defender Aluko, thank you. Lana Greer, thank you. Diane Gibson and Dr. Janet Hobson, thank you. Those are the Black women who work to make today possible, and I want to take a moment and lift them up. And Mayor Harris, today's panelists, and President Morial, thank you for uplifting Black women leaders. And to our participants for today, thank you for sharing this time and this space with us. We really do appreciate you, and we hope that we can continue to keep this conversation going. And with that, I hope you guys all have a great day.